All right, DRS, let's get to the end of Monday Night Football to end out Week 17. It's our final Monday Night Football game of the regular season. No Monday night games next week. No Thursday night games for week number 18. So this is a game that we had circled earlier in the year. Oh, what could you ask for on the final Monday Night Football game of the year? Better than this rematch from the NFC Championship game between the 49ers and the Lions. Well, San Francisco is sub 500, already out of the playoff mix. And with Minnesota's win over Green Bay yesterday, this game really doesn't matter all that much for Detroit. Sure, it matters, but the game that will only impact the playoff standings is next week in the Motor City, even if the Lions win on this Monday night in Santa Clara. 3.5-point spread in favor of Detroit, total at 50.5. DRS, knowing what is actually at stake for the Monday night finale of this regular season, how do you approach betting it?
It's very hard because you might have to wait a little bit later in the day, but for me, I'm already approaching it by saying, look, Dan Campbell, love what he's done in Detroit here. And yes, the way he's done business there is the reason why Detroit is a great football team. But there is a method to the madness sometimes that you have to be pulled back, whether it's your general manager, whether it's your assistant coaches, whether it's the ownership group, and says, Dan, love you here. Let me hear your game plan and how you're going to lay it out for Monday Night Football. Well, it's a football game. We want to win. We're going full blast. And I said, you know what?
Yeah.
Love what you're trying to do here, but I'm going to send you on a one-way ticket back to Detroit to have you get ready for Minnesota because that's absolutely ridiculous. I understand they're professionals, they're regimented, but sometimes when you look at a football game, because you do have to go back and see what the MO would be, right? If you would have told me, like, Detroit, we're just going to do things differently. Preseason game number 3, we're playing all of our starters as if it's a real game because I want to get ready for week number 1. They didn't do that. They didn't play any of the starters here. Why? Because it was a meaningless football game that you didn't want to get anybody injured heading into week number 1 to start your season out. And this is a Detroit team, Ben, that over the course of the season has lost major pieces to their defense and offense on their way to thinking that they can win an NFC championship and a Super Bowl. If you play this game tonight, full blast, and nobody gets injured and you're no worse for the wear, that's one thing. But that's also ridiculous because you're already working at a disadvantage on rest time because Minnesota played the day before at home with no travel. You're on the road in San Francisco, long plane ride back. But you cannot risk any injuries. Like, legitimately, you have a chance to win a Super Bowl. What's the meaning of this game versus the San Francisco 49ers, who are also dead in the water, who could care less if they win this game? If all things accounted for and Detroit needed this game, go full tilt, blast this football team, and head into the postseason. But it doesn't mean anything. I'm an Eagles fan. From a fan perspective, yes, Detroit, play everybody. Get as injured as you can because I think that's the toughest team to beat in the NFC. As a handicapper, I have the Detroit Lions with a ticket to get to the Super Bowl here. I don't want you playing anything, but from a head coaching vantage point here, Ben, you cannot play your key players tonight extended periods of time. You can't do it, Dan Campbell. Don't do it.
I think it's really well said, DRS. We'll continue the discussion on the other side of the break. We continue our preview of Monday Night Football, the final Monday Night Football game of the 2024 National Football League regular season. That, on paper, a few months ago, seemed like a banger of a way to go out. But as we enter this Monday night in Santa Clara, is it really? San Francisco is a 6-9 football team that has failed based on expectation this season, mainly because of injuries. Eliminated already from NFC playoff contention. It happened a few weeks back. The Detroit Lions are 13-2, favored by more than a field goal on the road on this Monday night in Northern California. And perhaps you're thinking, well, the Lions just saw Minnesota win to get to 14-2 yesterday. Detroit needs to keep pace. This game doesn't actually impact the NFC North standings or the NFC's number 1 overall seed race. It all comes down to game 272 next week in the Motor City as the Lions will host the Vikings. The winner of that game, regardless of tonight's outcome, will win the NFC North divisional crown and claim the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. So, Donnie, we're debating what Dan Campbell might do for this game with Detroit. He is aggressive. You can question some of his coaching decisions, but you cannot call Dan Campbell dumb. He is not. he understands everything. In fact, he might be too aggressive because he is too much of a new age guy. We understand the idea of grit and the mentality that the Lions have in the biting kneecaps under Dan Campbell. So you would always think, well, if it's a football game, we'll line it up and we'll go out there and we'll play everybody to run it down the 49ers' throat. That's not actually how he operates. The buy-in and the investment is always there, but he understands the stakes and how important next week is for Detroit. And Donnie, as you said, this is not a Lions team fully healthy that could, go out there for a half and be fine regardless of result. This is a Lions team that the last month has been incredibly banged up, and its main and key contributors. They need to focus on next Sunday night against the Vikings. I do wonder what the plan is going to be, and I wonder what we see, Donnie, in the next few hours as we get ready for Monday night.
You can't bench everybody in the NFL. We understand that. Like, when I talk about the Eagles next week taking a bye week, that means like your key 15 out of 22 starters aren't going to play. But there are going to be guys on the offensive line and defensive line who have to play. But your true key components where you say to yourself, I already lost David Montgomery in the best 1-2 punch in the backfield, and I'm down to Jahmyr Gibbs. If Gibbs goes down, I have no chance to win in the playoffs. That's what you have to look at. Jared Goff is in the pocket. The chance of a quarterback getting injured is slim, but we've seen it happen before in games. Look, it's football. Things happen that way. But if you want to say, okay, Jared Goff, go out there. I'm going to give you a first half, just get in rhythm because we practiced all week. Our mindset is to head into this football game as we want to win. But it's up to the coach to put that mindset to the players, which you see it a lot. Hey, you guys are all playing in this game. Only right before the game, they go over and be like, take your helmet and shoulder pads off. You're not here because they want the preparation. That's the most important thing. You tell a professional athlete, an amateur athlete, anybody in your work office, hey, guys, this week doesn't matter with any sales or work that you do. Half of that team is going to be like, well, I'm not going to bed at night. I'm going out to the bar because nothing matters. But if you tell them on Friday, you better have your sales results in from a sales perspective, they will. And they say, oh, it didn't matter. Congratulations, bonuses for everybody. That's what they're going to do. If you play your guys all 4 quarters and Jahmyr Gibbs gets 25-plus touches in rushing and receiving tonight, you're just doing your team a disservice. He can't be dumb in the biggest moments. He was incredibly stupid last year against the 49ers. Don't double down against the 49ers. And maybe playing in San Francisco is his kryptonite where everything goes haywire and he just can't think straight here. Rest the key players, get them out early, go win yourself a division championship and the first overall seed by doing it the smart way, Dan, not the dumb way.
And that's next week against the Vikings in a game we have never seen in the history of the NFL. 13 or potentially 14 wins for Detroit, 14 wins for Minnesota, the most combined wins we have ever seen in a football game in the regular season in the history of the NFL. I will just say this, right? We're talking about motivation and the handicap and how it all plays out for Detroit tonight in a San Francisco team already eliminated from playoff contention. Does that mean if I don't think the Lions are playing all of their players for the majority of the game, I would back the 49ers getting more than a field goal at home? Not necessarily. San Francisco's only been a dog twice, and they have been awful in doing so. And I think the Lions could get out to an early start. So maybe Detroit first half. Do we lean under a high total of 50 and a hook? We'll see. I think we'll talk about the actual betting angles, Donnie, for the mentality we think Detroit might present in hour 3 when it comes up next. Live right here on the early line, we welcome you to hour number 3 on this Monday. He is DRS. That is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We get you set for the Monday Night Football finale, not only to Week 17, but in the entirety of this 2024 NFL regular season. Our last Monday night game. There is going to be a Monday night game during Super Wildcard Weekend to kick off the postseason. But our last Monday night game of the regular season tonight between the Lions and the 49ers, a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game that doesn't really have all that much hype and excitement behind it. We'll explain why and what it actually means in just a matter of moments. We'll talk to the doc, the Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, in just a little bit for his assessment and insight on the injuries around the NFL, what it means for the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs. And TV Tom Vecchio, the prop perspective for an interesting handicap for Monday Night Football in Santa Clara. All of that, DRS, in this final hour up until 11 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, these are the tough games to handicap, but also the most fun games to handicap because you're playing outside the X's and O's and trying to figure out what these coaches are going to do. From one perspective on Detroit, how long do they play their starters? Do they play all the way through? Because if they do play all the way through with their starters, they are going to absolutely Hulk smash the San Francisco 49ers. But from a 49ers perspective, and also Brock Purdy, I am hours away, it feels like, from the biggest Powerball payday I'm ever going to get. I just hope I don't get, decapitated in the pocket in this game because my team is down so many starters and I can't operate the way I want to. So that's the struggle that we're going to have tonight. I do have one way, which we've already talked about there with Jahmyr Gibbs. We'll go over that a little bit later, try to play this because if I can factor on one thing making sense, you can't burn your best player a week before your biggest game. That's my handicap, Ben. That's it.
I agree, Donnie. But that's where it gets really interesting. We could be dead wrong, right? We have said that Detroit doesn't really need this game. That might seem insane. The Giants won a game they shouldn't have yesterday. These are professional players making millions of dollars playing a dangerous game in football. If they are going to be out there, they are going to try to win said football game. And the Lions still might, even if their starters don't play the entirety of all four quarters. I would agree. That's where things are for San Francisco. They don't have motivation left. They've already been eliminated from playoff contention. What exactly are they striving toward at this point? That is another part of the handicap and the motivation. Because, again, before we hear from the people, we do just want to stress that in Game 272, the regular season finale on Sunday night next week in Detroit, the Lions will host the Minnesota Vikings. Regardless of tonight's outcome on this Monday in Northern California, whoever wins that game between the Lions and the Vikings will win the NFC North and claim the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. That is the game that dictates the outcome of the NFC playoff picture, not tonight, regardless if the Lions win, lose, or tie. So knowing all of that, what do the people think for tonight's game? Let's find out together and Fade the Public. A lot of people still thinking the Lions are going to play all of their starters and absolutely hammer San Francisco. What is the best bet for Monday Night Football? At SportsGrid on Twitter, is it the Lions as more than a field goal favorite on the road? The Niners as a home underdog. A high total, by the way, 50 and a hook, over or under. Donnie, 53% of the public backing Detroit, thinking the Lions win this game comfortably, easily cover as a 3.5 point favorite. Are you fading the public?
Yes and no, because I didn't vote on that side, because I'm conflicted on what we're actually going to get. Maybe different ways to bet this game, to take a Lions first half, but I wouldn't be taking the Lions full game -3.5, knowing that we could see more of a preseason type game in the second half, but not necessarily a preseason type effort from San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, who probably wants to say, you know what, Brock Purdy is my guy for next year. He'll spin it a little bit here. We'll have some good improvement on offense, and away we go. So I don't want anything to do with the side. I didn't vote that way, but I did take under 50 and a half because I don't know why the game plan for San Francisco would be, let's whip it all around the yard 40 times and see what Brock Purdy can do. You know what he can do. You just don't want him to have a bad football game. You certainly don't want him to get injured by dropping back 45 times in a meaningless football game. And on the same way, the opposite side, Ben Johnson is one of the best play callers in the NFL, if not the best, can be argued.
Yeah.
Is he putting out all his, hey, guys, we saved all this up for this late in the season. Forget about the important game next week. Let's throw all the crazy looks like we saw last week where let's stumble around and throw touchdown passes and do all that fun stuff. I think you're more of a vanilla game plan tonight. So for my money, it should stay under 50 because that means you probably pulled your starters if you played them by the half and you go ultra vanilla. Ben, when you watch preseason football, right, second half of the game, starters got some work in. Let's just put some film on tape. Let's see how the offensive line blocks. No blitzes, no crazy plays. Let's run the football and keep the clock going. Like, I actually think the under 50.5 makes a lot of sense if this game plays out as more of a preseason look in the second half.
Yeah. It's how I bet it as well, or it's how I voted as well in the Fade the Public poll, under 50 and a hook. Don't love the Niners, even if we don't think the Lions are going to play the entirety of the game, getting more than a field goal at home. San Francisco has been an atrocious underdog this year, despite only being booked as a dog twice. If we get news that Detroit is only going to play their starters a half, or we get news at 2 p.m. this afternoon, the Lions are sitting everybody out, it's not going to be more than a field goal in favor of Detroit. But there is a danger, Donnie, I think, in betting the side tonight, based on being wrong, whichever way you think this game is going to play out. We might be dead wrong. Dan Campbell might say, I'm done listening to these talking heads. We're playing everybody. We are treating this game like any other regular season matchup. We are going to go out there and win it. And if that's the case, I would lean Lions laying 3.5. Or he might say, listen, I'm going to be a little bit close to the vest here. Maybe, who knows? I'm going to be a little bit coy, right?
Teddy Bridgewater, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hendon Hooker, who knows? I'm going to be a little bit coy. I might play my starters for a little bit, but then sit them out. I don't necessarily know. I think the best way to bet this game, and we'll talk to TV Tom Vecchio in just a little bit, is that prop perspective. And Donnie, we have been talking about it all throughout the commercial break, trying to get in on the number. Under 18.5 rush attempts for Jahmyr Gibbs, under 94.5 rushing yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. If he plays the entirety of this game, I would be surprised, or at least the entirety of the game with the onus on him carrying the load. So I would actually bet the under of his props tonight.
It's the only way you can approach this game, and I think it's the sound way to do it, because the only reason why I didn't bet the under 94, which I think is a great bet, by the way, because he does have some electricity where he can bust that 30 or 40-yard run in the first quarter. It's like, hey, he actually had 111 at the break, which, again, I don't think is going to happen. It's just an extreme circumstance. But you're right, Ben. Fourth quarter, 17 carries. He's trying to salt this football game away. Like, it can't happen. And there's no way you're going to be like, hey, you know what? Let's get him his work in the first half and give him Saquon-like touches, because Saquon's chasing a record. It's still a meaningful game. Like, I just can't see any scenario that plays out where Jahmyr Gibbs is the lead back for 4 quarters. And that's all Ben and I are talking about. It could lose, yes, but you're trying to play the scenario that you think should play out here outside the X's and O's. He can't be the back in the fourth quarter, and that's what it's going to take to get that 20 carries.
250.5 is the number for Jared Goff. I would also lean under that as well if we are following a similar thought. We'll look at Brock Purdy's props with TV Tom in just a little bit. And by the way, I hope you think this is not just Donnie and I starting speculation that the Lions might rest their starters. DRS, I follow a lot of great people from the state of Michigan, from Michigan State fans and Michigan fans, through social media, obviously college sports, Big Ten football, all that great stuff. A lot of them are hoping Dan Campbell does the same. To see players you didn't even know were on the 53-man roster suit up and play tonight in Santa Clara. So we're not just trying to start a conspiracy for the sake of doing so. The Monday Night Football finale to our second-to-last week of the National Football League regular season, our final Monday night game in the 2024 NFL regular season in Santa Clara, a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Detroit Lions. As we get you set for this Monday night, we welcome on TV Tom Vecchio of Sports Grid to help us understand from a mentality and stakes standpoint what we might see on this Monday. Tom, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here.
Of course, thanks for having me. Like you said, last Monday night game of the season, things have changed since the beginning of yesterday in terms of motivation, what these teams are playing for. We know what the Lions are set for next week against the Vikings. I am ready to roll.
So regardless of tonight's outcome, as Detroit is a 3.5-point favorite against San Francisco in Santa Clara with a total of 50.5, the Lions' season will be defined by next Sunday's game to end out the regular season at home, hosting the Vikings in a matchup of two teams that might have 14 wins, but at bare minimum 27. That game next week, Vecchio, between Detroit and Minnesota, determines who wins the NFC North and who will claim the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. Tonight, win, lose, or draw for Detroit doesn't really impact that whatsoever. So having an understanding of what is actually on the line, how do you approach the odds, seeing the Lions as more than a field goal favorite?
Well, yesterday, when I was getting set for this game around kickoff of 1 p.m., I was texting producer Joe Freeze about what I liked today. And I was saying the Lions minus 3.5, the Lions minus 6.5, and the Lions minus 9.5, alting them all the way up because the Lions were going to be in a spot to exact some revenge for the NFC Championship game, which they kind of threw away last season. And that was obviously before the results of the Vikings-Packers game. I want to still believe that. I want to still believe that the Lions go out there and take care of business, as we saw earlier this season when they did so against the Cowboys. They ran up that score 47-9, obviously dating back to last season when we had that little issue where the Cowboys, they won that game because the Lions, they didn't have the offensive lineman. He reported, he didn't report it, and the Lions came in with that loss, and they lost home field advantage going back to last season, and they would have had that home game last year. So I want to roll this all together and believe that the Lions and Dan Campbell come out and still take care of business. Despite this being a quote-unquote meaningless game, the Lions come out and drop 31 points, and they win this game 31-20 or so. I think that puts us right at that 50.5 number, and the Lions come away at minus 9.5.
Yeah, if this game meant something where Detroit needed this to actually win for next week, I do believe that they would put them on skates, and there's no way that 3.5 line would be out there. It probably would be, Tom, at 9.5 at this point. We'll see how it plays out. But the one thing we do know, starters are expected to play in this game. And if we're looking at Brock Purdy and Jared Goff, the two quarterbacks here, Brock Purdy 255.5 is this number, Jared Goff at 250.5. Passing props here for touchdowns, to throw 2 touchdowns or more for Jared Goff, minus 192. Brock Purdy over 1.5 at minus 114. How are we playing the quarterbacks, Tom, in this game?
It's got to be Purdy. And, this stems from the fact that I do think the Lions will be out in front. Purdy's line over 255.5. I certainly like. Over the last 4 weeks, we've seen the Lions defense obviously be hit with the injuries. The defense is allowing 289 passing yards per game, 334 from Caleb Williams, 362 from Josh Allen, et cetera, et cetera. I also want to roll in the fact that, again, we're the final 2 weeks of the season. Purdy's coming up on a contract extension. That's like one of the big storylines for the 49ers. Why not go out there and put up some good tape in the final few weeks of the season, right? It's a meaningless game for both teams. Like, that's just a fact. But him going out there and slinging the ball against a defense that is just factually weaker compared to where we saw earlier in the season, Purdy pushing over this number in a losing effort, I think is very realistic tonight. So I will take the recent trends with the Lions defense being bad and Purdy going out there and putting up some good tape in the final 2 weeks of the season, just as we saw last week against the Dolphins.
Not just struggling production-wise for Detroit defensively, but of course, very significant injuries on that side of the football as well. And in the running back room for both teams, David Montgomery may be out for the remainder of this year. Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, the list goes on and on for San Francisco. So the matchup tonight at the running back spot, Jahmyr Gibbs for Detroit, Isaac Guerrero expected to return for San Francisco. How do you approach the backs in this spot on Monday night?
I almost want to have no interest in either of them. And this is not because, Gibbs isn't good. Gibbs is amazing, right? And he's going to see the lion's share of that work. And, I don't expect Craig Reynolds to get too much work. And the only time Craig Reynolds would get in is if they actually do pull their starters. And we don't see Jared Goff out there. We don't see St. Brown and Sam Porter, et cetera, et cetera. So I have no interest in fading Gibbs and taking an under because he could clear that number at halftime. Then they just pull all the starters. Guerrero, I also have no interest in just because the re-injury risk is so clear for so many of these San Francisco running backs, as we've seen time and time again. I think this has to turn into a passing game for the 49ers. And ultimately, just with the struggles the Lions have had on defense, this is where the 49ers should be able to move the ball down the field. So getting to Jennings, getting to George Kittle is where I expect most of the production can go. Deebo Samuel apparently can't catch the ball. So I'm going to focus on Jennings. I'm going to focus on George Kittle, and I'm going to focus on Brock Purdy tonight.
Yeah, there are some interesting angles to play, too, because it's one of those games where if you get a clean slate all the way through, I think you're going to have numbers. You're going to be very happy with some of the way these turn out, whether it's touchdown props or yardage props. But there's nothing worse than saying, I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown to go over 72.5, and he has 68 at the half. You're like, man, this guy's going to clear 100 easy, probably multiple touchdowns, and him not coming out for the second half. So approaching this game, even if we're looking at it from a more perspective of a wide receiver or two that you like tonight, Tom, is this one of those games where you watch it all the way through, or is it more meaningful to you that you maybe exercise those rights in the first half as opposed to the full game in this one, not knowing if those starters will play into the late third quarter and fourth quarter?
Right. I think you have to take that, you have to have your stance from the start of the game, right? You can't be like, I'm going to do halfway. You can't be in between. So I don't want to side with too many of the Lions players because there is that concern. Again, things have changed drastically since where we were 1 p.m. yesterday to leading up. So I actually have more faith in the 49ers, the players just putting out points. Because granted, if they do pull their stars, especially in defense, they're, like you said, they've already been hit with injuries. They're already not playing super well on defense over the past few weeks. So if they even pull the starters that they have who are already backups to begin with, we could just see those garbage time yards pile up for the 49ers. So specifically, I like Juwan Jennings. I really like him over 62.5. He's only got one more year left on his contract. So again, this is the kind of performance that he can put up a big one, maybe get a contract extension. He leads the team with the 26.1% target share. Right, we see the Lions have like 2,814 receiving yards, specifically to wide receivers. That's the second most in the league. So Purdy, Jennings getting some yards. Let's do it tonight.
Yeah, listen, I would agree. If you're going to look at a prop perspective and bet some overs, to me, it's on the 49ers, Tom. DRS and I have already shared. We're on the under for Jahmyr Gibbs, his rush attempts, his rushing yards, knowing that starters are going to play, but just for how long, that remains to be seen. Vecchio, as we have our final game on this Monday night for Week 17, and then enter Week 18, understanding that motivation, what is at stake, is a huge part of the handicaps. How do you recommend bettors kind of approach the regular season finales in all of those spots from a prop perspective?
From a prop perspective, the ideal situation would be teams that need to play and win, and then maybe we sprinkle in like a little bit of motivation. Someone like a Mike Evans, who is approaching 1,000 yards. He had 97 yesterday. So Baker has talked about getting Mike Evans to 1,000 yards, but they also need to very clearly win. So like that's the ideal spot, motivation and a player reaching a milestone or a contract incentive, whatever it might be. And then there's going to be a chance where like we have teams that are completely out of it, and Brock Bowers continuing to set rookie records. Do we need to be betting on him? So I would say you have to have your stance early in the week. You find out these contract incentives for some of these players or milestones, and you want to jump early because when these lines come out, they will jump up quickly. Because everyone's going to be betting the over, this receiver needs 90 more yards. If his line opens up at 79.5, it's going to be bet up to 86 or whatever it is by the time Sunday rolls around. So you have to be early on these lines this week.
Playoff motivation, who is going to play for how long, all of those things should be added to your Week 18 handicaps and maybe even Week 17 to end it out on a Monday night. I'll tell you guys this. I'm going to look at Mike Evans next week, right? The Buccaneers need a win against the Saints. Mike just 85 yards away from his 11th consecutive season, all 11 years in the National Football League with 8,000 yards. Come on now. Let's have some fun. Tom Vecchio, as always, we appreciate the time. We'll see you tonight on Sports Grid for all of the coverage around Monday Night Football as well.
Of course. Thanks for having me, and we'll look to Team USA to beat Canada tomorrow in the World Juniors.
Yeah, there you go.
That's in hockey, right?
World Junior Hockey, under 20 tournament.
Heck yeah. World Juniors Hockey. And I think the Winter Classic at Wrigley Field tomorrow. Hockey,
also
man.
true.
What a sport. More around Monday night next. It is our final Monday Night Football game of the 2024 NFL regular season. And what is at stake for the conclusion of Week 17 between the Lions and the 49ers. In Santa Clara tonight, the Niners a 3.5-point home underdog against the 13-2 Detroit Lions. 50.5 is that total. Donnie, we have talked about this ad nauseum now with where things stand and at length throughout this show. This game does not actually matter for Detroit. Wins are wins in the National Football League, and they are never easy to come by. And these guys are professionals that always want to win. But the outcome of tonight's game has no impact on the Lions winning the NFC North or being the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. The only game that really matters is next week. Game 272, the true regular season finale all around the NFL in the Motor City, the Lions and the Vikings in a Week 18 game as good as you will ever see. But it's not Week 18 just yet. So what are the Lions going to do here against the Niners in Week 17?
That's the big question mark. But let's just go back on a little bit of history tour here, Ben. And I just need to go back to last year, Week 18, my Philadelphia Eagles. Not playing so great to end the season. They could have actually improved their standing, I believe, by maybe a seed line if they had beat the New York Giants at Giants or MetLife Stadium last year in the final week of the season. But the springboard really was what they were telling us. Like, you know what? We're going to get right here. Even if we have to play our starters a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters here, let's get right before we head into the playoffs. They probably played their worst football game of the year. Jalen Hurts on his throwing hand dislocated his middle finger. Fantastic. And A.J. Brown was lost for the season with a knee injury in that game. And, Sidney Brown also blew his knee out in that as a key special teamer. Then the Eagles went into the playoffs and got absolutely destroyed by Tampa Bay. I'm not saying this is going to happen for Detroit, but let's play this out where we are talking about the Niners as not a good football team, which they aren't, which the Giants were a horrendous football team last year. Let's just say they do play the first half, Ben. Nobody really gets injured, but they don't play well. Does that mean that Dan Quinn's like, you know what, we got to get a couple good drives in here, and then possibility of injury in the second half? Do you see how I'm playing this out? I am not a Detroit Lions fan by any mark, but when I see things like, boy, I don't think you're doing this, and you're going to play with fire tonight. Let's just see, Ben, they play the entire football game, play well, put up 42 points, and win 42-7. You still had your football team play a complete game and then have to play their biggest game of the season, when also remind yourself that yesterday Minnesota played, got their star running back banged up in that football game, but they needed to win it here. They played all of their starters, hard minutes, all the way through that football game. Do you know what's better for your football team tonight? To say, you know what? I have 12 guys that I absolutely am not going to play tonight. My quarterback, my tailback, my 2 defensive ends, my 2 offensive tackles, and my 2 best players on defense. They're not going to play, but let's just see how we can go out and play football in this game. Because what you can't have happen, I understand, again, what Dan Campbell is building. And it's a football game, and damn it, you can get hurt in any game that you want. But tell me this, Ben. In a meaningless preseason game, which Detroit had in game number 3, they played nobody. This football game for Detroit tonight, Ben, is completely meaningless. Why are we playing key players all the way through this game, or heck, even starting the football game? That's where I'm breaking it down. Because if I say to myself, if Detroit is going to play their starters, I'm just taking them in the first half. They should win this. They're the better football team, and they should move the football with ease. That's the way I would play this game. No way, shape, or form I'm taking the +3.5 or laying the 3.5 full game when I have no idea what either one of these coaches is going to be doing better in the second half. That's the angle tonight.
Of course, Detroit has been a cover machine under Dan Campbell. This year, they are 9-5 against the spread as the favored side. They covered in 9 of their first 11 games. They now have only covered once in their last 4. It was last week as a touchdown favorite at Soldier Field. Earlier in the week, exactly a week ago, in fact, Dan Campbell was asked about this notion. If Minnesota should beat Green Bay on Sunday, you cannot clinch the division or the 1 seed until week 18. Would you think about resting your starters? This is what Dan Campbell had to say. Quote, we're bringing everything we've got to this game. And quote, you wouldn't expect Dan Campbell to say anything but that, frankly, DRS. And that was a week ago, not in the reality that has set in the last 24 hours, that it all comes down to game 272 next Sunday night in the Motor City. I'm not sure how I feel about the spread. I think if I was going to bet a side, it would be Lions first half, laying 2.5 in the first half, -166 on that first half money line, by the way. I don't really know how I feel about points. Even if we see starters for only a half, it may be some backups. The Niners can run it up. Maybe the Lions run it up against the banged-up San Francisco side as well. I think the way, Donnie, that if I'm going to bet this game, here's how I do it. Under Jared Goff, 250.5 passing yards, under 94.5 rushing yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. Expecting to see them tonight, but maybe not for all 4 quarters.
It's the right way to play it. And Ben is not laying out a factual stance where we know how this game is playing out. You're playing by logic tonight. We're logical as human beings. When you can see the silver lining that says next week is the biggest game, why are we laying everything out on the line? I would be shocked if they played all the way through. And if they did, so be it, because I think it's the completely wrong decision. Right. You can have your convictions one way or another and try to meld them in and say, what are the X and O's going to look like? Like Jared Goff throwing 38 times tonight for 422 yards with the biggest game in the season on deck when you're playing a preseason game tonight, it doesn't make sense. The only way you're looking at Detroit is in the first half from a team perspective. But for full game scenarios, unless they break their complete game, like, hey, 60.5 or 70.5 yards, whatever Amon-Ra St. Brown is, and he has one catch for 75 yards and a touchdown in the first half, oh, well, that's what happens here. But the life of this team's scape tonight through all 4 quarters, I don't think it's going to be there. Like, we should see Hendon Hooker in the second half at some point in this game, Ben. And if you say to yourself, Jared Goff has 320 by then so be it. You live with it.
Right, exactly. He could go over that number in a half, in 3 quarters. There's also a chance he plays all 4 and still stays under 250 in a hook.
True.
Or Jahmyr Gibbs
True.
ends up with 91 rushing yards and under 94 and a half. We shall see. And I'm sure we'll get some updates throughout the afternoon.
Yeah.
This is a time where working by 11 a.m., maybe we don't have the full picture for Monday Night Football tonight in Northern California. But DRS will be there for your Monday Night Football, NFL football in-game live game day. And so we let him go right now. DRS, a very happy new year. We'll talk later this week.